How are we doing? I hope everybody's really well and looking after yourselves out there. Now, the World Health Assembly has adopted what they're calling an historic pandemic, agreement to make the world more equitable and safer from future pandemics. So this has happened, and it happened, I suppose, while we were all distracted. Look over there, look over here, look over there. And it was a unanimous, more or less unanimous vote. There were a few absentees. Anyway, it's there. So what does it mean? Well, it means that they can make up another pandemic, just like they made up the last one, which was like our house cat flu. And they can make up their phony injections and say, you have to have them this time. It's obligatory. So all the people who signed up before, all the people who said that we were crazy anti-vaxxers, conspiracy theorists, are now going to have to reassess. Are you going to come over onto the anti-vaxxer team? Are you going to look at this in a way that is serious? Because it is serious. And that's why we've dropped everything. That's why we've been jumping up and down. That's why we tried to stop people taking the so-called vaccines the last time. We can see the fallout to that now. We can see what is happening. So the stories are everywhere in the media, but they are concealed. So we have here, this is a story from July 2023, Eilish O'Regan, increase in hospital patients dying of heart failure may be linked to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we can cross out pandemic and put in fake vaccines. I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's these injections that are causing heart failure and the cancers, the turbo cancers and the clots and the heart attacks and the sudden deaths amongst our young and old, everybody, that we are supposed to pretend is the new normal. And we're supposed to pretend that it had something to do with a fake virus. COVID-19, they're calling it. And we're all supposed to pretend that there was a vaccine or that there was a pandemic. We're all supposed to pretend that there was a pandemic, but we know right well there wasn't, because we have the receipts, we've gone through it thoroughly, and we can see there was no pandemic. Now we have here Wicklow TD on need for cardiovascular care reform. These situations are preventable. Yeah, we know how they're preventable. You don't take dangerous gene therapy injections that give you strokes and heart attacks and blood clots. That's how you prevent them. But we have Deputy Edward Timmins here. He's a Wicklow TD. Edward Timmins has spoken up about why he has agreed to be an advocate for the thousands of heart disease and stroke patients in his constituency. So what he's saying here, there's a new Oireachtas heart and stroke group has recently been set up. Why has that been set up? To build consensus across the political spectrum to support these abandoned patients. Okay, so again, we have a report that's leaving out the elephant in the room. What's the elephant in the room? What is causing this spike in heart failure and cardiovascular problems? What is causing it? What was everybody encouraged to enter in 2021, 2022, 2023? They were encouraged to enter a very dangerous medical trial, and that's what it was, with no long-term guarantees, with a long, long list of side effects that are not discussed in the mainstream media. But we are getting reports like this, and now we have some Oireachtas committee being set up to look at it. But again, ignoring the salient facts, ignoring that everybody's been encouraged to take part in a very, very dangerous medical trial. So I just want to bring up something that went out on RT Radio 1, and it really boggles the mind that anybody would continue to tune in to RT Radio 1, considering the role that Claire Byrne played in getting people injected and how she continues to ignore the excess deaths. And yet people haven't registered this and they continue to tune in, which is most peculiar, but it'll also tell you where we're at in terms of mind control and conditioning and brainwashing, essentially, because that is what it is. Now, this went out in January, and this is something I took note of at the time. Barely anybody registered it apart from myself. And I just thought, well, this is outrageous. This is a new program they have where they're down in the sewer, basically testing poo and pee for viruses, and you don't have to show any symptoms. So they can declare that they found some new virus down in the sewers, and now we're going to have a lockdown. So let's just play a little bit.
As it is for other things.
Right. So tell me what else you're seeing then when you're doing your work, Niamh, and examining the stools and getting the supplies from Ishka Éireann and so on. What else are you looking for?
Yeah, so our project, obviously we've seen the value of wastewater surveillance throughout the pandemic and how that information how much information we can actually get from something that's literally labelled as waste. We look at other viral pathogens as well, and we monitor for polio. But there hasn't been any detections for that, obviously, in Irish wastewater. And we also look at influenza and RSV that are circulating at the moment. But a lot of illnesses and public health concerns, they do leave a signature in wastewater, so you can actually measure a lot of other things as well. Wastewater surveillance is actually included in the revised Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, which has now been enacted. So it's something that will be continuing. And our project is actually also part of an EU-wide project called EU-WISH, and that's a collaboration between 26 countries. And one of the aims is to actually identify new targets to monitor with this surveillance method.
So is this one way, I suppose, of being more prepared now for the next pandemic that may or may not hit us, that we have all of these measurements in place where we can see where...
Oh, Claire Byrne is practically licking her lips there for the next pandemic. She's, who's going to listen to her next time? And why are you continuing to listen to her now? This is the bit I don't understand. I mean, it was bad enough, the garden shed thing. It was bad enough Luke O'Neill in those silly bubbles. I mean, the absolute mocking of her audience. And yet, here she is talking about a next pandemic, and she is still on the radio. This is outrageous.
Where these things are coming from.
Yeah, so the one thing we do know is that this virus, it does seem to change. It has been changing, and there are things obviously we don't know, but we do know that surveillance is key to be prepared. And this way of monitoring the wastewater surveillance is great because it's cost effective, it's non-invasive, and also it picks up things like asymptomatic cases and things.
Yeah, did you hear that? It picks up asymptomatic cases. So nobody needs to be showing any kind of symptoms, but it's going to say, hey, we found the next virus, and you don't even need any symptoms for it.
It's like that. You don't have to rely on people coming forward.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And particularly with COVID as well, Luke, like people aren't getting tested, in the way that they were.
Yeah, there we go. So that's Claire Byrne's job. Okay, that's why they pay her the big bucks. So first of all, she encouraged people to get tested, and we knew the tests were fraudulent, right? We knew that the cycles were too high anyway, and they were producing way too many false positives, and it was a load of arse anyway, because there was no virus on the loose. So now they're going to bypass that because people aren't going to partake now. Now they're a little bit more cagey, not cagey enough, but they're a little bit more cautious. So now they're saying, well, we don't need you actually to test yourselves anymore. We're not going to test you. We're just going to bypass all of that and head straight for the sewer.
Or at the peak of this thing. So it's really useful to have this to measure it.
Well, to give Neves Lab credit, Vim, who's the head of Neves Lab, they've been world leaders in this, really. And Vim's been advocating for this for a long time. COVID woke us up to how useful wastewater testing is, really.
COVID woke us up to how demonic our mainstream media is. And, there's no going back from this. Basically, people like Luke O'Neill and Claire Byrne and Ryan Tubridy and all those presenters on RTE and across the board, all over the mainstream media, encouraged their listeners and their audiences to take part in a very dangerous medical trial that is killing people, and they are ignoring the excess deaths. And now we know how bad they are because they're going on to the next pandemic. They don't care.
And now it's becoming more routine, especially in the US, isn't that more than other places?
Yeah.
But even still in Ireland now, we've got this great service in UCD that's measuring stuff in the wastewater for us. And that will be the canary in the coal mine, because you might see something unusual there. You might see an unusual strain of COVID is emerging, and then you might be able to act then to try to put the fire out.
There was a lot of talk about being ready for the next pandemic and what we had learned. I mean, has science, do you think, learned to any great extent from what we went through?
Have we learned? And that's a good question, Claire. That is a good question. Have we learned anything? Now, there's the few of us who speak out regularly and constantly, actually. It's not just regularly, it's constantly, because we understand how dangerous the situation is. But have the people learned? As long as the people are tuning into these kind of radio shows, and as long as they are continuing to trust the science, it means they've learned nothing. How many more injections will they go back for? Will they ignore all the suddenly and unexpected deaths? Are they going to pretend that this is the new normal? What have we learned?
Disappointingly, everybody's saying this. The WHO are saying we're not prepared for the next one. We've got to really do better with pandemic preparedness. And the WHO are leading this to some extent. And they're going to announce in March, I think it is, a big sort of global sort of agreement around what to do, in terms of when the next pandemic comes along.
Right. So they're talking there on the 20th of January. So that's happened now in May, actually. It happened just yesterday that the World Health Organization announced that they've gone for this treaty. Okay. So this is the pandemic treaty that we have been shouting about for a long, long time. It's passed. So now we're in a very, very dangerous predicament all over again. We had a little bit of a lull there. It was a false sense of security. People wanted to forget about it. Don't talk about the vaccine. Don't talk about this fake virus. Don't talk about it. Shush, shush, shush. We've got Conor McGregor here. He's going to save the day. Shush, shush, shush. Who cares if he's in a Freemasons hall? Shush, shush, shush. No, this is why we haven't shushed, because this is incredibly serious.
But it's a bit slow. I think inevitably the way politics works, people forget about these things.
Yes, you just want to move on quickly, don't you?
It's understandable, I suppose, because there's a new emergency, but certainly there will be another pandemic.
There will be another pandemic. There will be. They've told us, how many times have they told us? We have been warned. These Luciferians have to tell you. They have to put it out there. You have been warned. You have been told. Now, what are you going to do about it?
Agreed on that. I don't know when. It could be 5, 10, 15 years away. We'd be foolish not to learn from the last one and get rid of it and waste.
There was no pandemic. And that's what we have to remember. If we've learned anything, we've learned that there was no pandemic, that there was no deadly virus, that they killed people using ventilators and remdesivir and all sorts of so-called treatments, including midazolam, on our elderly. And until people start recognizing what happened and start speaking about it openly and start directing their anger not at boomers. This is a new trend. Oh, what the boomers landed in this. This is a trend. This is a psyop. Ignore it. The targets are clear. We know who they are. We know what they did. We know what they're continuing to do. And if we don't direct our ire at these people, we are the biggest fools of all time. Talk about the dumb ages.
Wastewater is actually a key part of that.
It's a very useful thing to do. But just coming back then to COVID itself, I mean, you said that our immune systems have learned, the vaccines have helped with that. If you're somebody who has escaped COVID, though, over the last 5 years,
that's a worry. Yeah, there's no doubt. If you have never seen the virus, now how that could be now, we don't know, because it's been everywhere. But if your immune system's naive, it's like you were in 2020. You're at risk of severe disease then. And those people, if there are people who feel that they have never seen it, they should take the vaccine, because that would help, prepare their immune system.
That's Becker. He just never gives up, does he? He never gives up doing his big pharma snake oil salesman.
They see it. So that's an important aspect.
And given how it's played out now, what do you think the future of COVID is? Can we say at this point?
There's a good aspect here. There's a group of scientists think it's becoming more benign, and there's some evidence for this. And in fact, there was a...
Listen, even Bill Gates said it was no more dangerous than the flu. Even Bill Gates said it. So, I mean, okay, I'm just going to stop that there, because, I mean, that is painful listening, but we have to. The only reason I tune into RTE is to see what the propaganda is. That is the only reason, and then to point it out. I know a lot of you out there aren't tuned into it, but I do it just to point it out and say, look, they're coming with this, and we better pay heed, and we better have an appropriate response next time, because not enough of us. There was only a few of us, and we got treated appallingly, and continue to be treated appallingly. And you'll bring in anybody and everybody but the people who actually spoke out. And all sorts of charlatans have turned up. Now, I just want to go over to X for a minute, because Dr. Marcus de Bruin has been batting it out of the park. Now, I disagree with him when he says there was a pandemic. I don't know how he can say there was a pandemic and say that people were murdered, but at the same time, what he's doing is very, very, very powerful. So I'm willing to get...
18, well, a good while after that, I was elected.
This is him talking to Dr. Dave Cartland, and he said something incredibly important here. And, at the beginning, I think it was 2021, it was 2020. Sorry, in April 2020, he resigned from the Irish Medical Board. So that is huge. This is huge. It cannot be ignored. In journalistic terms, this is a huge, huge story. Now, this is a story now that's been ignored by the mainstream media. And that's very telling. And that's because they're covering up their tracks. That is because they are now nervous. This is a huge story. It deserves mainstream media attention. It's not getting that. And again, it's back to the people to understand why. Why is such a huge story being ignored? It's being ignored because the mainstream media are guilty. Okay, they are guilty and they are complicit in the murder of their own people. And that is an appalling state to be in, but that is exactly where we are. And until we start registering this, acknowledging it, and then reacting appropriately to it, we're no good. We're useless. We'll go and wave your free flags for Israel, and hope that Conor McGregor is going to save you. That's about as useful as you're going to be. Until you actually acknowledge all of this stuff, you might as well sit down.
In 2018, well, a good while after that, I was elected by my colleagues to become a member of the Irish Medical Council, which I was on for a couple of years until the nursing home. I had a nursing home and a surgery at the time, a busy practice. So I resigned from the Irish Medical Council because of the manslaughter or the murder of, that sounds terrible, but look, it's how I feel, the murder of so many elderly residents in the nursing home sector. So I resigned from the Medical Council. I tried to blow the whistle about what was happening, and bizarrely, in a very Kafkaesque sort of a way, I got a letter from the medical regulator of the Medical Council in Ireland to say that they placed me under investigation in 2020 for basically opinions in respect of the nursing homes and the vaccine and that sort of thing that were undermining the guidelines.
Now, that clip is incredibly important. It is incredibly important. He has said it. He has said what we've been saying for a long, long time. Jackie Devoy over in the UK has been exceptional on this. She's made documentaries. She's pumped out reports. She's been largely ignored. But it's something that we cannot ignore. What happened in the nursing homes in April 2020, April 2020, when they used end-of-life drugs to kill or murder because it was the do not resuscitate, and they turned the families away. And while those families' backs were turned away, that's when they went in for the kill, and they called it COVID-19. So I don't understand why Dr. De Bruin is calling it a pandemic when we know exactly what happened, because we have all the midazolam receipts. We know that they ordered in more midazolam and everything. So I just don't understand. That was the supposed pandemic. That was not a pandemic. That was murder. Okay, I just want to finish on Max Egan, because I think I've said enough now, but a voice who's been a very steady voice, I have to say, all the way through the fake pandemic. He's been very, very steady, but he seems to be back. Is he back in Australia? I think he's back in Oz. He's been hard to follow because I think he's banned on X by the looks of things, and he only pops up every now and again. I isolated this clip because I thought this was very interesting. I still have another half an hour to listen to. He's some man, I'll tell you, on these live streams that he does. They're very, very interesting. But I thought he hit the nail on the head on this one. I'll just play it for you.
Just concept of what it means to be a decent and humane person. All of this has been thrown aside with Gaza Strip and what's happening in Palestine. It got thrown aside before that with what people succumbed to in the COVID lockdowns. How people who wouldn't take the vaccine and wouldn't wear a mask and were calling this out as a fraud were just being shunned by the majority of society. And the majority of society was saying, they deserve to die. Terrible, terrible things they were saying about the...
And he's right. We did go through that. And we're being told, shush. Again, this is another thing we're being told, shush, immigration's more important, or that's more important. Would you ever give over talking about the virus or the fake virus? Would you shush? And those voices now are to the fore. And, it's people like Max Egan who's been banned, people like myself too, and others who have been steady voices are being told to shush. And I say, absolutely, no way. We'll only get louder. And even if we're banned, we'll find a place to speak up.
People who stood against the complete erosion of freedoms and the psychological and physical attack that was put on the people that was the COVID scamdemic, which was a complete scam. And they lied to us. They tried to kill so many people with vaccines. They did kill so many elderly people. Families out there that were denied seeing their grandparents when their grandparents were on their deathbeds in hospital, being fed things like midazolam and end-of-life drugs to terminate them. So many people who died during COVID were murdered by hospital staff. So many.
And fair play to him, he's using the word too, murdered. That's what happened. You could say, well, they were old, they were going to die anyway, sure, nobody, really cares. I do. Max cares. There's more and more of us actually care about what happened because it could be us next. And we know that. They brought in these assisted dying bills. They want us gone. And they will do it in a way that appears to be, oh, well, never mind. But we have to mind. We have to care.
And people were shunned. You weren't allowed to go to work. You weren't allowed to open your business. You weren't allowed to have anybody around. None of it was based on any medical reports at all. None of it was based on any medical information. None of it had any standing at all. It was all completely and utterly government overreach right from the start. We lost so much of our humanity through that. And then moving it into what we are now seeing happening in Gaza Strip. A world of children. 75% of the population is 17 years old or under. You can't tell me you're having a war against these people. It's a genocide. It's a slaughter. It takes two armies to have a war. It even takes two countries to have a war. Gaza and Israel, Palestine and Israel are the same country. The Holy Land of Israel always existed within Palestine. It was a place where holy teachings were taught. It was never a country. It was never a state. And these parasites have come along and turned it into what it is. Like everything has been flipped upside down. Even the Star of David, there is no Star of David. It's the Star of Renfan, the Star of Moloch, which is what? Moloch, child sacrifice. That's what a lot of this is about. That's why they keep the age down in Gaza Strip, kill all the parents, kill all the adults. And the people who get released, the alleged Israeli hostages that get released, come out looking just as good as they went in. Were they really hostages, or were they simply being held somewhere by Israel and making it look like hostages? Are they just actors? None of it was.
No, I don't know about the actor thing. Maybe. I mean, nothing would surprise me. But what I will say about the nationalist movement in Ireland is that we are, and I'm not going to say, but I'm not going to put myself in there. I'm going to remain independent and remain on the outside. It's the only way to be for a journalist. Don't join groups. But looking on at the free flag wavers, the anti-quirk free flag wavers who are there essentially for Conor McGregor. They may say they're not, but that's the production. That's why you got the free flag. The production is for Conor McGregor, who is a Zionist puppet. And so you're going to have to choose. You want to show up for that because, he's saying no Palestinian flags. Now, listen, I'm concerned about the genocide in my own home, but I'm not going to stand there and watch a live streamed, real life genocide take place in the Palestinian territories and not react. It's appalling, what the Yanks, what Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, they may not necessarily represent the people. I think they represent some of the people for sure, but certainly not all the people. What it reminds me of is, say, the real IRA blowing up kids in the Omagh bombing, and then for the UK to come and bomb the whole of Ireland. There's plenty of Irish people who did not agree with the real IRA or the IRA or any of them, or any of their tactics, and would have been certainly undeserving of being blown to pieces by association. And that's what's happening. And we know what's happening. But, you have the free flag wavers who are pretending it's not happening. And they're just like, hey, we've got our solution now. So shut up. You're ruining the narrative. We need to be unified. And I'm thinking, well, baby brains got to grow up. It's time to grow up.
Would surprise me, folks. None of it would surprise me. I mean, Hamas was created by Israel anyway. Hamas was put in place so the Palestinians could vote Fatah out. And then as soon as Hamas was voted in, with a small majority, 52%, they were declared a terrorist organization.
Okay, so I'm just going to leave it there. I mean, he's very interesting and he knows an awful lot about the Middle East. I've had to learn a lot. I mean, I covered it when I was in the news. I used to read the cycle of violence, Oh, it was kind of like how they used to portray the North. It was just bang, bang here, blow up, bomb over there. This cycle of violence and with no solutions, and it's just the way it is, and we just have to accept it. It was a very confusing way of reporting and covering. Well, it's not a war zone, as Max Egan says. But I do find him a trustworthy voice. I do find what he has to say very, very interesting. And I have appreciated what he's put out over the past few years. Yeah, where are we? Okay, so listen, I just wanted to get those few things down because, so much is happening and people are very concerned as to which way to go, what to do, how do we respond to this. It's like kind of caught between a rock and a hard place sometimes. And I do understand that. And I certainly don't have all the answers. But I do think we have to return to some semblance of acknowledging objective reality, the objective truth. Until we do that, we are not fit for battle. It's like going into battle blindfolded and being led by the enemy over a cliff. And I've said that from the beginning. So until people start being honest and truthful and more soulful, and a return to humanity, a return to being decent people, we cannot expect spiritual protection. We won't get it. We won't get it until we improve. And that's just the way it is, because as Max Egan said in that extensive broadcast that he did, it's all a reflection. And I would concur with that. It's all a reflection where we're at. We're only in this dire state because the collective morals are in the toilet, in the sewer, with Claire Byrne and Luke O'Neill. All right, take care. Bye-bye.